Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Workshop 3, Communicating the Value of Water. My name is Danielle Dolan. I'm the Water Program Director for Local Government Commission. Before we get started in our workshop content, LGC strives to always acknowledge the Native peoples on whose land we occupy whenever we're conducting local projects or events. We try our best to respect the sovereignty of our Native American tribes by acknowledging that this is their land, their homeland, and that the Indigenous peoples are the original stewards of this land. The Santa Ana watershed is the traditional territory of a number of federally recognized tribes as well as non-federally recognized tribes. These include the Saboba Band of Luiseno Indians, the San Manuel Band of Serrano Mission Indians, Morongo Band of Mission Indians, Santa Rosa Band of Cahuilla Indians, and the Tongva and Gabrielino tribes, as well as the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians and the Ahashaman Nation. Look in the resources section on the workshop website. There you'll find more information that can help you learn more about the traditional territories where you live and work. Now, for those of you who haven't participated in previous workshops, LGC has been working with the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority for several years now on the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program, funded by Proposition 1. We've conducted several of these trainings throughout the watershed, both in person and online. The 3 topics of our Watershed Ambassador Training Program are 1, getting to know your watershed, which provides an overview of the history of conflict and reconciliation in the watershed. 2, collaborative planning in the face of uncertainty, in which we identify the major agencies and plans involved in water and land use, as well as highlighting best practices and opportunities for multi-benefit projects. And this workshop, number 3, communicating the value of water. In this workshop, we'll explore how to better communicate the value of water to your communities. But first, we must recognize that your constituents come from diverse perspectives. And these unique experiences impact how they receive your agency's messaging or information. Not all stakeholders have had a positive relationship with water. Some only understand the tip of the iceberg, pun intended, and how water is used. Controversial or hot button issues can lead to heated emotional responses. Just a reminder, recordings of this workshop and our other 2 workshops are available on our website at lgc.org/SAFA. Our goal for these workshops is that you will complete all 3 sessions in order to maximize your learning and opportunities for future collaboration. However, we do recognize that you have many demands on your time, so we've designed each session to provide a standalone benefit, even if it's the only session you attend. The certification recognizes that you are an informed leader, committed to a healthy and resilient community, and dedicated as a public representative of the watershed. Whether you participate in 1, 2, or all 3 of the virtual workshops, you will complete and submit an activity worksheet for each workshop that you participate in and request your certification. SAPA, Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority, will send you your certificate as either a watershed steward, watershed champion, or watershed ambassador, depending on how many sessions you complete. Today's workshop comprises 6 mini sessions and several guest speakers. Please watch all of the videos and do so in order as they build on one another. We're hoping that this workshop will help you better understand best practices for communicating effectively to diverse constituents and their relationship to water, as well as helping you prepare to respond to those hot button water issues like rate increases and water quality concerns, and also identify opportunities for collaborating across jurisdictions and departments on community messaging and engagement. We understand that there are a number of barriers public agencies face when trying to connect with their communities, especially about water. Whether it's a lack of trust in government or an inability to reach certain groups, or a lack of coordination between jurisdictions, or socioeconomic and historic conditions that have led a community to feel disenfranchised from water management decisions. We're not going to be able to tackle all of these challenges today, but we do hope that the tools, discussions, and resources shared during this workshop will help you begin to tackle your water-related communication challenges. So, where do we begin? As we've discussed throughout this workshop series, water is a complex topic. There are many players at work, and the process of managing water is fragmented and confusing. Water has become a commodity, and one that's not always highly valued by the public. For example, think about how the public is outraged at rate increases, but is perfectly happy to continue paying for their cell phone bill despite increases every year. Water system management is not well understood by the general public either. To many people, it can be scary, confusing, and emotional. Our communities rely on water for sanitation, for cooking, and drinking, and yet most consumers don't really understand where their water comes from in the first place, nor what their water bill actually pays for. To communicate the value of water, why it's important to invest in infrastructure and system maintenance, and why it sustains our communities, it will take a collective effort from water managers, elected officials, and local governments. Public agencies should collectively streamline communications, especially when your customer base may already be receiving mixed messages about water. The COVID-19 pandemic is exacerbating these communication challenges. Transitioning everything to a virtual environment is helping to overcome some past inequities while also creating new ones. In this time of crisis, disorder, anxiety, it's more important than ever to ensure your communication is as effective as possible so it can cut through the noise. Effectively communicating the value of water will require some critical reflection on your part. Much of what we're going to ask you to do today may make you feel a little uncomfortable, but growth and improvement often requires a little discomfort. Letting down your guard to really think critically about the inclusivity of our communications is the only way forward. It's easy to get defensive when you're dedicating your life's work to ensuring healthy, sustainable communities. You have many competing interests that you're trying to address, and as public servants, we know that your heart is in the right place. But if we're not taking the time to truly understand our community's needs and concerns, sometimes our actions miss the mark. Or even worse, we add stress or get in the way of groups being able to access that information that you're offering them. We need to look beyond our good intentions and examine the outcomes of our communication strategy. One of our expert speakers, Dr. Theopia Jackson, likened this to the idea of having a dinner party. I can invite people over for dinner, but if I don't check who's vegan or who's vegetarian, and I'm a carnivore, I open my home, I have good intentions, I put together a beautiful meal, but I haven't realized that I'm not giving my guests the nourishment that they need from their perspective. I'm only offering them what I assume they need from my own perspective. So when my guests come and don't eat, I would think, look at this, I give them this beautiful dinner and they refuse it. What's wrong with them? This may seem silly, pretty oversimplified example, but we have a long history of doing just this in our communications, especially around water. Offering something to someone who doesn't show up and take it, and then we say, what's wrong with that group? See, they don't want any help. When the reality is what we offered is not what they needed, or was not offered in a way that actually allows them to say, yes, this is working for me. The goal here should be reciprocity. We need to improve two-way communication and understanding that allows communities to share their perspective, and in turn, you learn something directly from them that you didn't know. For example, the vegetarians show you how to make a delicious mushroom steak instead of them seeming ungrateful for not responding to your offer. One of the activities conducted through the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program was an ethnographic strengths and needs assessment of key stakeholders in the Santa Ana watershed. The ethnographic survey process illuminated some common challenges in our water-related communications. Finding ways to improve in these topic areas served as our guide in setting today's workshop agenda. They also led us to bring in experts from Raftellus and SVPR Communications to deepen our understanding of inclusive water communications. You can find a detailed summary of the interview findings in the Ethnographic Strengths and Needs Assessment available in the resources section of the workshop website. I also want to quickly highlight for you some of the common challenges and general recommendations the report provides to overcome these challenges. First is language barriers. Language barriers are a common concern raised by local governments, water-related agencies, and community members. The first step in understanding where language barriers arise is by critically assessing who you're hearing from within the community and who tends to be left out of engagement or public input. To better serve non-English speaking residents, the report recommends hiring dedicated multilingual public agency staff or having internal translators available, which will not only reduce customer wait time, but also increase your responsiveness to a broader spectrum of users. If hiring new staff isn't an option for you, consider how costs for translation and interpretive services can be shared across departments or even agencies. Are there other departments within your agency or other agencies in your region that are seeking similar services? How can you find out? At a bare minimum, you must ensure translation and interpretive services are built into future project budgets where public engagement and input is required. Susie Villegas will speak in session 3.4 about the common pitfalls of bilingual communications and cultural stereotyping, which are also critical considerations when developing inclusive practices. Next is communication with trusted leaders. One of the biggest challenges across all stakeholder groups was maintaining consistent communication across sectors and groups, especially those that are historically underrepresented. To address this, the report suggested that water decision makers devote staff time to developing long-term relationships with community-based organizations that already have these established trusted relationships with the overburdened community members themselves. Faith-based groups, schools, and family service providers are great partners. This will help you better understand the localized concerns and better communicate to your constituents. We've learned that often the biggest failure in agency communications is the failure to identify what barriers prevent your constituents from accessing resources and information. The concept here is bake it in, don't sprinkle it on top. Engagement and communication must happen early and often. Even if you don't see an immediate tangible difference, you're showing up in a good faith way and demonstrating that you're committed to listening to local concerns. That is arguably the hardest and most important step of inclusive communications, but it offers the greatest impact in helping to bridge the gap between government agencies and communities. Part of this process often requires learning more about your community before you reach out to them. Do you know who the cultural leaders are within your jurisdiction? Finding these key local messengers will help establish genuine communication channels for two-way education and better response to community needs. Third is localized tap water concerns. Tap water quality was a common subject of discussion during the interviews, both the real water quality concerns on behalf of the agencies, as well as the perceived quality or level of trust of tap water among consumers. We know that some of these community messages come from a culturally or socioeconomically grounded place. For example, the water's not safe to drink, we can't afford to move off septic. But in order to address them from an inclusive perspective, we must truly understand where those fears are coming from and provide the education and resources to help overcome them. Building on my previous point about trusted communication partners, the ethnographic report recommended that water providers work directly with community-based organizations to listen to and respond to the localized concerns that people have about their tap water. Don't just brush them aside because you know the water is safe. It's important to acknowledge that sometimes the clean water delivered from the agency to the customer does not guarantee clean water coming out of the tap. And even though that's not your agency's responsibility, the customer doesn't always know that. Working to address in-home infrastructure challenges, which will likely require collaboration with other agencies or departments, will go a long way to building trust and understanding among your constituency. Speaking of collaborating with other agencies and departments, the final key point that emerged through the ethnographic surveying was the need for continued local government engagement across sectors, between jurisdictions, and among internal departments. Interviewees expressed the need for more frequent coordination to combat the communication fatigue experienced by both community members who are receiving messages from multiple public agencies, as well as the various public-facing departments that are working with limited resources. Coordinated engagement and communication can also ensure institutional knowledge is not lost with changes in elected office or turnover between agency staff. One way that we've seen coordination improve is by leveraging internship or professional development programs like Civic Spark Fellows. This will help expand local government capacity to collaborate. Interns or fellows often have a fresh perspective to your water-related communications and may offer new skills to improve your outreach. Young leaders are often eager to learn and have more time to attend other agencies' meetings, which will enable you to have greater representation in cross-jurisdictional efforts. Not only can you expand your capacity to collaborate and learn new skills from young leaders, you also have an opportunity to train the next generation of public servants and create a potential workforce pathway to increase diversity within our local governments. As public agencies, communities must ultimately see you as a trusted source where they can share their needs and concerns openly, and you in turn can respond to their needs and educate them on why investing in our water management system benefits them in the long run. We can do this and leverage our limited public resources more effectively by understanding our communications landscape. That is, who else can we partner with on communication? And how can we partner to achieve shared outcomes? That is the subject of our next session. This concludes session 3.1. Next, please watch video 3.2 on mutually beneficial partnerships.